Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 53 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm James Parisi here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and I've just finished scolding him for some very minor technical thing that we learned in year one or maybe two of BCIT, but he has since corrected it, and our instructors who are not listening to this podcast whatsoever will surely be pleased. They can rest their hearts and souls. But speaking of my wonderful co-host, Aiden, how are we doing, fella? What's new? How's life?
All good. All good in Canuck land. I mean, I know they're coming off. Well, actually, we're recording this on Thursday and it'll come out on Friday. So there's a chance that it's very not all good in Canuck land by the time this episode is heard by anybody.
That's playoffs, baby.
Yeah, game 4 is done between Vancouver Edmonton. Game 5 is done between Dallas and Colorado. This is the first time in James and I knowing each other really well. In 2020, we vaguely knew each other when Colorado played Dallas and Vancouver played Vegas, but this is the first time we've really known each other and had both of our teams in this race this deep. So it's exciting just for that, even for me and James to be able to hop on a podcast in the middle of May and still each have a dog in the race. But there's a chance that neither of us do by next week. And I think just because I'm super willing and eager to just jump into this, I'll give you a how are you platform, but then let's get right into Dallas, Colorado.
Yeah, altogether life's good. I've kind of been all over the map. Um, I went back to my hometown, Port Alberni on Vancouver Island recently. Something actually pretty cool happened. I actually don't think I've told you about this. So my 6 and 8-year-old cousins have gotten super into hockey. They started playing hockey this year. Their mother, who was super against those kids becoming hockey guys, um, is now the most enthralled hockey mom. They're in a bunch of different little skill development things. They're gonna have prep camp at the end of the summer. They're playing ball right now. They're turning into little athletes, and it's awesome. The older one, the 8-year-old. He isn't as much of a natural athlete, but as soon as he's really focused on something and he's really dedicated to something, he puts everything he's got on it. The younger one, his nickname is Bam Bam, like the Flintstones. That's what my grandpa calls him. Um, he immediately went from first shift onto a team and he starts scoring 2 goals a game and stripping the puck off another kid and then passing it to someone else. And then just being bored and doing a figure skating twirl in the corner, which he's never learned how to do. He shouldn't be able to do that. His skating shouldn't be there, but he's got one leg in the air and he's doing a twirl because he's bored and he already scored 2 goals and took the puck from a kid on the other team and gave it to one of his teammates. And so my uncle, their dad, realized that they've never actually watched a hockey game. So he starts throwing on playoff games. Immediately, these kids are hooked. Hooked. So he goes, huh, these Canucks games are expensive. Wait a minute. The Alberni Valley Bulldogs are in the playoffs.
Oh, dude.
So
Speaking of,
they start going to BCHL games and the Bulldogs start marching their way to the conference final. I happen to be in Port Alberni and I'm stopping to drop off these kids a giant pile of hockey cards because that's all that they care about right now. So I just give them a pile of base cards. They're going crazy organizing them all team by team on the ground. And then my uncle goes, "We're going to the Bulldogs game, playing against Surrey." And I'm like, "No way. I used to work for the Surrey Eagles. I'll go." So I walk in, I immediately see good friends, Joey Pitt and Lucas Celli.
Lucas, friend of the pod as well, of
Yep.
course, former guest.
Yep. And so I did an intermission report with them.
Oh, that's
Hopped
sweet.
in the booth. Time of my life. Great hockey. The It looked like the Bulldogs were coming back in that series thanks to excellent play by a goaltender named Callum Tongue, who was pretty much nobody a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and he's now looking pretty damn good. I don't think I've ever seen a goalie play that well in junior hockey. Like it was just insanity. to the point where he was featured on the NHL and Spit and Chicklets and stuff's Instagram accounts for ridiculous behind the back save.
I
I
just
recommend you check that out.
I had landed back in Vancouver from Calgary,
Yeah,
and I turn off airplane mode, and I just see this string of Lucas Chelly sent you a chat because he had sent me the link to the save because I hadn't seen it yet.
yeah,
And it has to be also said that Alberni Surrey series was something quite good, and unfortunately, in the
great
BCH
hockey.
in the BCHL, the conference final, and I know, I know there's a chance that this ruffles some feathers, but you're basically competing for the privilege of losing to Penticton in 5 in the final.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
like it was a great series, and it ended up being Surrey that wins, and I hope the Eagles the best, Lucas as well, obviously, but Penticton just they just got they fought their way past Salmon Arm. I think that was going to be their biggest test, and they're in the final.
Yeah, the cool thing with that Eagles Bulldogs series though was that they played each other in conference final last year.
And it was Alberni that won.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's my little Port Alberni adventure. I went and played footy with some friends. Did a quick tour of the local breweries. Enjoyed myself. Port Alberni's breweries are fantastic. If anyone stops there on their way to or from Tofino, highly recommend. But yeah, that's enough about my little adventures. Let's get into some playoff action. Where are we starting, Aiden?
Let's start Dallas, Colorado, because it was last
Oh God.
most recent.
Okay. Yeah, this Dallas team, I against my heart, I picked them to win the West for a reason. That's what my bracket says, and that's what I have said all along. Other than when I jokingly say the Avs are going to march through everyone and take that. Um, you know, Colorado just won game 5, and in that game they had their first lead of the series.
Yeah.
Now, game 4 was kind of a nightmare, um, because of the how deep are we gonna go into the Nichushkin thing? Or should we just run by it?
I would I definitely have a Jack Johnson 2 cents that
Okay, okay.
arrive
Well,
at.
basically, Valery Nichushkin, he was in the player assistance program earlier this year. He was just leading the playoffs in goals among all players, and he was probably Colorado's best penalty killer as well. And yeah, he failed a drug test of some kind. And a couple hours before the game, it comes out that he's not available. Then Colorado's second best defenseman, also a very important penalty killer, Devon Taves, misses game 4 with injury. It was very clear that game was going to be a loss.
Yeah, keep talking about the series, and then we'll circle back to Nichushkin at the end.
But yeah, that game was immediately going to be a loss. Colorado played with 0 life, and understandably so. That's like 2 of their 6 most important players immediately gone, like hours before the game. Who knows? Maybe some of the players or the organization knew earlier, but yeah, no, it sucked. It really sucked. And that game served as a reminder to me to be careful who you watch your favorite team play with. Sometimes really annoying company can be really annoying. But yeah, it really sucked. It sucked watching a team that a few games earlier looked like a true contender just have 0 life. But that's how the playoffs can work. It's game by game, and things can change in an instant. They came back in game 5 yesterday and played with everything. They suffocated the Stars very often. Miro Heiskanen is very difficult to contain. Very difficult. As soon as he starts walking the line, it's that backpedaling thing that he does. Very frightening. But Cale Makar managed to outplay him at both ends, and that was all that was really needed. But yeah, if the Avs are going to eventually win this series, if they are, that's a very strong if, win a second and third game in a row. It's going to have to be the kind of thing where their best players are their best players.
They were
Yakov
in
Trenin
five.
also, yeah, and they were in game 5, but Yakov Trenin also, who I've been hyping up this whole playoffs, um, he had played 253 by the end of the second, and then the commentators were saying that he was unavailable, so that could be another loss, which is very unfortunate. It's a lot of depth dripping down and falling through the cracks, but, the one upside is Jonathan Drouin's back from injury, so that's a nice little shot in the foot. I
I
like
liked
that.
Lekkonen's game too yesterday. I know he
Very,
played.
very good.
I,
Lehkonen he's a playoff guy.
yeah, and it's the you know what you're getting shift in, shift out, and that's at his worst, he's still gonna positively contribute every time he's on the ice.
One more thing I've got though, I've been a very harsh critic on the excitement of other teams, how exciting other teams are, after watching Avs games. Like the pace can sometimes throw me off. And I've also said recently that other teams' power plays just look so flat.
Mm.
Um, some other teams, that is. But dude, Dallas's power play, they're scarier than Colorado's. Wyatt Johnson is just like, hey, I'm over here. Oh no, hey, I'm by this circle. Oh no, I'm close to the net. You can't contain me.
He's their best player right now. Like Heiskanen maybe aside, like it's Heiskanen and Johnston right now. It's their
Yeah.
world in Dallas. Like
Yeah, it's nuts. Also, I will give Jake Ottinger props. That guy fights for every single puck.
yeah, and you know what? That's good. That's I'm glad you brought that up because I've been a little bit underwhelmed with him in these playoffs. But and at the end of the day, I do a lot of I do a lot of watching players specifically just to get a gauge on my opinion of them, right? It's kind of the scouting mindset. And when I'm watching goalies, it's how it's not necessarily the saves they make or don't make, right? It's not necessarily different intangibles or their footwork or X or Y. It's how often are they giving up on a play? And if it's happening a lot, that's usually my turn away from a goaltender. But Jake Ottinger, you said it. Like as much as again, I know he can be better. He's doing all the right things to be better, which makes you think it's going to come, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think part of it is the confidence of that team too, right? Like even when he starts playing bad, his game trickles get why do I keep saying trickles? His game falls off. Um his team seems very confident in him. It's a very confident bunch. Like those guys go out and battle 24/7. Um I also one other thing I noticed, such a random thing. Parise's on the Avs and Suter's on the Stars. The buyout boys. One of them is going to move on. Suter's never been to a third round, no, a third round other than last year. Last year was his first third round, to my knowledge. And Parise went to a finals once. And neither of these guys have won a cup. So, and then Pavelski's on the Stars too. He's never won a cup.
Yeah, and he wasn't really playing like he wanted to for a little while there.
Dude, last game he was frightening.
Was a monster last game, and
Yeah. Oh, and that's the last guy I want to wake up.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think him winning a Stanley Cup would be awesome. I mean,
As an Avs fan, watching your team play against the Stars, you don't want him to wake up.
no, absolutely
One
not.
more Stars player to give flowers to that's never won a cup, Jamie Benn. That guy's turned back the clock. He is a stud. My God. Every time he touches the puck, he's a wizard in the face-off circle. He's just throwing elbows that are undetected. He does the veteran face-off tricks
Yeah.
where people just don't know what to do against him. He's going to be in their face in that circle.
Well, and here's one thing I'll quickly add before we get to Valerian and Shushkin about Dallas, and it's about Ben and it's about Tyler Seguin as well. So Ben and Seguin, like Jamie Benn is a former Art Ross Trophy winner. Tyler Seguin was a second overall pick. I mean, he got traded to Dallas. It was a huge deal. It was those guys in Klingberg that were like the superstar core of that Dallas team in the late 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a slight regression in Ben and Seguin, but I
And
respect
Klingberg.
well, Klingberg's Klingberg, but I respect Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin so much for the fact that they've they've accepted the fact that the team has evolved around them to the point that they aren't the guys anymore, right? That they almost, as much as being the best version of themselves, they have to fill the role that the team needs them to fill. And whether it's in press availability or body language on the ice, I don't get those guys are ever pissed off that they're not the superstars anymore, right? And I totally respect being able to recognize that you need to do what you need to do for the good of the team. And I think Ben and Sagan, like, there are times where they're middle six guys right now, right? They're not the go-tos on Dallas. And I know they get a lot of power play time, but Rupe Hintz and Wyatt Johnston and Miro Heiskanen, Jason Robertson are all more important to that team now. Even Joe Pavelski still to an extent. And how deep the stars are, Stankoven and Marchment. You have so many guys filling spots. And the fact that Ben and Sagan have just consistently stepped up to whatever plate that the Stars have needed them to, and Ben specifically still being a great leader. And I think it's awesome to see, because I don't think that every NHL superstar in that position would have taken as well to being, kind of succeeded before they were done, right? That's what happened is those guys aren't the guys in Dallas anymore, but they've carved out spots on that team to be as effective as possible, and they've done it without really complaining, right? Like I don't see any animosity from them that they're not the centerpieces of that team anymore, and I respect that like crazy, because a lot of a lot of guys have egos that wouldn't let them do that.
I wholeheartedly agree. And one more of those guys, Matt Duchene.
Totally, yeah,
He only has 5 points in 12 games in this playoffs. When you watch him on the ice, it doesn't look like a guy who only has 5 points in 12 games.
he's playing good hockey.
He plays great. And at age 33, he's also never won a cup, third overall pick back in 09. Never really was the consistent superstar he was thought to be, but nonetheless a great pro and a great NHLer. And I've always followed him on social media, and seeing he's at a stage in his career now where he's got 3 kids and a wife. And one of his kids is that 6 or 7 age, and he's getting stoked and cheering on his dad in the stands. And you always hear a lot of interviews with players who have had kids going, my kid has no idea that I was a professional hockey player for 15, 20 years. They don't understand the magnitude of that at all. And at the tail end of a guy's career, him having a career resurgence and being that guy as his kid is watching and falling in love with the sport, that is so cool. That's pure hockey heartstrings at its finest. I'm a big fan of that. But I guess before we move on, we should probably address the comments made about Valerie Nichushkin. I'll start at Jack Johnson, and I'll move to the ones that I felt were a little more important in the end. It was noticed by reporters that Valerie Nichushkin's nameplate is no longer in the Avs dressing room. It's gone. It's probably pretty telling. Jack Johnson's comments post game were that Nichushkin had more or less made his decision. He made his choices. But while I understand how he and other Avs players feel let down, because this isn't the first time this has happened. He was one of their most important players last year, and he was gone in Seattle. I was in Seattle for that game that he was not there for, and all of a sudden it was, whoa, he's not playing. This is interesting. But Jared Bednar's comments were, at the end of the day, this is a sport, this is a game, and this is a guy who needs help. This is a guy who seemingly has addiction issues. Addiction is a problem. Addiction sucks. It's a disease. A lot of people go through it. I know people. You probably know people. Everyone probably knows someone who's been affected by addiction. So, in the end, yeah, it sucks as an Avs fan. Yeah, I can't imagine how much it sucks for those teammates, how much they feel let down. But in the end, I just hope the guy's okay eventually. In the end, I'm people first. That's how I feel. I guess just to explain further, if after this 6 month suspension without pay that Valerie Nichushkin's been given, there is another mistake after he's reinstated, it is a 2-year suspension without pay and no guarantee for reinstatement. So he's kind of on his final chance.
Yeah, I listen, man. Jack Johnson is 37 years old, all right? And he's been around the block. He's never won the Stanley Cup. He hasn't, right? He wasn't on the Colorado team that did. That was the one year he was in Chicago. Um, eh, at the end of the day, there's physical health conditions, there's mental health conditions, right? There's things that affect your physical being. There's
Aiden, Jack Johnson was on the Avs when they won the cup.
Oh, I thought that was his Chicago year. Okay.
Year after he went to Chicago.
Because it was, I know his Colorado time was split up with one season in Chicago. I didn't remember which.
Yeah, and he actually ended up on the Avs last year after the trade deadline too.
Um, but that almost strengthens my point more that this guy needs to be a leader in this room. And at the end of the day, anytime I hear comments about addiction, what I'll parallel them in my head is how would this sound if this guy had cancer and Jack Johnson was saying that? They're both medical conditions, right? They're both illnesses. So the fact that Jack Johnson kind of goes out and absolutely no sympathy, right, for somebody dealing with something very serious, and it rubbed me the wrong way immediately, and I've kind of taken the time to reflect, like, okay, was my reaction like spur of the moment that I was pissed off about it, or did I have every right to react like that? And it's like, no, I totally think he shouldn't have done it. Jared Bednard said the right thing, right? Sucks we don't have
Mhm.
him around, but at the end of the day, he needs to. It's his life, right? And
Yeah.
there's so much beyond hockey.
Yeah.
He needs to work on himself beyond hockey. Yeah, I didn't like what Johnson said, and I also didn't like the fact that it came. Your team is down 3-1 in the series. The series isn't over yet, and you're airing out these grievances like, well, this guy cost it for us by relapsing into his medical condition, right?
Mhm.
It's a bad take on his part, and I hope, yeah. And the other thing to mention is the specific wording of Nichushkin. It's stage 3 of the player assistance program, which means, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is my understanding of it. It means that his previous stint in the player assistance program ended with him saying that he was going to quit whatever he was doing, which is why he was drug tested. So the drug test that he took had to have um, been a part of why he initially entered the player assistance program for him to get put into stage 3. It's like a continuation kind of thing,
Yeah.
which further goes to strengthen the fact that it's an addiction, right? Because it, if it's something that has been a problem, it's called a relapse, right? Like, it's pretty simple. And I, I I totally think there needs to be a lot more sympathy, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, did he make his choices? There's a chance he didn't, right? That's what an illness is. Like, it sucks. It sucks for the Avs, but hopefully, you got to just hope that he'll get better before you hope that he'll play hockey again.
And one thing I want to add on that, we have so much fun watching playoffs. A lot of these players, it's the greatest thing ever playing in these playoffs. But for some players, it's not so easy. It's the most high pressure environment they're ever in. It's the hardest on their bodies. They just went through an 82 game season. They're going through this. Um, it's not quite speculation, but it's not quite concrete, but it seems fairly likely just from all of the signs and previous history that Nichushkin his addiction tends to maybe be more on the forefront during playoffs. And I think back to former NHL forward Colin Wilson. He talked about how playoffs were extremely hard on him, how playoffs caused him to drink a lot more, and playoffs caused other things he had going on mentally to come more to the forefront. So I think, we're having a great time watching this stuff. Let's just not necessarily you and I. I think you and I might understand it a bit, but some people might have a hard time figuring that out. Some people might have a hard time figuring out the fact that all of this pressure and all of these things going on and all of these flashing lights and all of this do or die, it's not exactly easy to go through. Yes, they are pro athletes playing a sport for money, but it doesn't change the fact that this is their job
And they're
and this is their goal in life.
and they're human beings.
Yeah. So I think we could put a bow on that one there. I think that's about all we need to say, but just I guess when you're scrolling through the comments, you're seeing all these people lose their marbles and say things that aren't necessarily great about humans going through human things. Maybe don't add to it and don't pour smoke on the or don't pour gas on the fire. That's all I ask. And if you do, you do. Your life, go live it.
So it's been a tale of two and this is a hilarious over exaggeration, but it's been a tale of two different sets of NHL playoff games for the New York Rangers. They went 7-0 and then they've gone 0-2. Now, question will be around game 6 in Carolina, but James, game 6 in Carolina, like we're at the point now where the New York Rangers, like there's got to be that little bit of oh boy if you're the New York Rangers right now. They were, I believe, up 3-2 against New Jersey in the first round last year and lost. Um, Same manner where they had game 6 on the road and game 7 at home. They were up 3-0 on Carolina. They looked like they had the stranglehold, and the Hurricanes have managed to force 2 victories, first 2 playoff losses this year for the Rangers. And yeah, all of a sudden today, and we're talking about this on Thursday, kind of 4 hours before this game starts. Um, so by the time this comes out, we'll know if it's Rangers in 6 or Hurricanes in 7. So instead of speculating on what's maybe to come, since that's going to be nullified by the time this game starts, what have you thought about this series? Because to me, it does feel very much like, not that the Rangers have played 2 different series, but Carolina has, where they just didn't get anything going in the first 3 games, and they've just risen to the occasion in the last 2.
I think a lot of the problem for Carolina was puck luck. I didn't really think they played bad. And then a lot of the time, them not playing bad, but then the Rangers playing very well in specific special teams instances. The Rangers were just winning the special teams battle at times. They're scoring shorties, they're ripping it on the power play. Like, I think they have 2 or 3 shorthanded goals this series.
I think
It's been excessive, but honestly, man, I picked this Hurricanes team to win the cup for a reason. Take a look at their 4 forward lines. They're rolling out 2 impact players on the ice at every moment. It's nuts. But I was watching the last game they played, game 5, and dude, that Jordan Stahl goal, that guy turned back the clock, beat a guy wide, power forward move with speed, strength around the net. This guy's showing why he's a Selke nominee at age what, 33, 34?
older, isn't he?
34, I want to say. Um, he's same age as Jonathan Taves, I think.
35.
35. 35. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Also, Jordan Stahl has the longest time in between being Selke nominees ever. I
that's
think he was a nominee in 08 or 09, and he's a nominee this year. That's a very interesting stat. I love that. But I remember thinking when he was nominated, I was going, I haven't watched a lot of Hurricanes games this year, but when I did, he was Jordan Stahl. He was a very dependable, good third line center who contributed a bit offensively and was good on the penalty kill. But then I watched a few games this series and a couple games in the first round. Damn, that's a deserving nomination. He's not going to win it, but damn, that's deserving. I love watching the Hurricanes. I love watching the Rangers. This is my favorite series in playoffs right now. I don't care who wins.
off the top of the series. And I do, obviously I have the tendency to be overconfident when I am extremely fond of a certain team or a certain set of players. I was very confident that the Rangers were going to win this series, and I had a lot of people that I would talk about it with that would push back pretty hard on me. And then when New York went up 3-0, I talked a lot of crap. So if this series goes to 7, like I gotta hide. I can't show my face because New York, it was a lot of It was it was all I let my mouth run. Um, well, and the reason that I thought the Rangers were going to win is kind of the reason they won the first three games, and that's because when it came down to it, Igor Shesterkin was always going to make one more save than Frederik Andersen, and
Right.
so I think Game One's a perfect example of that. Like that Panarin game-winning goal in Game One should go in 0% of the time and not any more than that. There's no excuse for Andersen to let that in. That shot's at him, right? And so that game is a perfect, representation of the way I saw this series going. And again, this series could be over by the time this episode goes out, but I think the Rangers just have to keep pouring it on, right? Keep doing what you're doing offensively, and they've got a good enough defense and goaltending that they just, play smart hockey. I think they'll win. Now might as well just we went west, we went east. Let's go back to west. Canucks, Oilers.
Wait. I'm not done here. I'm not done in Rangerland.
One more
Um,
Ranger. Other than
Alexis
yeah,
Lafreniere has arrived.
Alexi Lafreniere. Yeah, yeah.
He just nobody can see. Aiden can see. He's just going around the net, going shoulder fakes, hip fakes, unreal passes, hits, knocking people off the puck and taking it from their teammate.
It's almost like he's good at hockey, which everybody seemed to ignore.
Yeah, it's crazy, hey?
No, and I again, like we've talked about this, and it's probably my least favorite thing about hockey fans. Just because a guy at 20 isn't like a superstar doesn't mean he's a bust. All right, like I
Yep.
don't understand. Shane Wright isn't a bust. Uri
Okay.
Slafkovsky isn't a bust. There's a chance that when they're 27 years old and have done nothing, all right, we'll call them a bust. But
Yeah.
like, especially those kids that went through the COVID years in their development, like that's
We
stunted
said
growth.
back then it was going to take them a while,
Yes,
but
and
then
I
it
don't.
starts taking a while and we
Everybody's
freak out.
shocked. Yeah, everybody like it's like everybody's up in arms. No, Alexi Lafreniere is a star, man. He's an excellent hockey player. You saw it in junior. You saw flashes of it this entire career, and now, yeah, he's arrived. I love him with Panarin, man. Oh my god, that is my potentially my favorite winger duo in the NHL right now is
10
Panarin.
points in 9 games.
He's been sweet, and you can see the smarts. You can see the drive this guy has, and oh man, I'm very happy with this kid because I've always been a huge fan of his.
And as you said, he's 22 years old. He will be
Yeah,
23 about a few days or a week into the NHL season next year. This year, he put up career highs in, oh, wait, everything?
yeah. Well, and listen, I'm 21, James. Like, I'm a child still, really at heart. You know what I mean? Like, this guy is just getting to be an adult, and yeah, maybe again, it baffles me still. Like, I have Shane Wright as my Calder pick next year, and I think if I said that to the majority of hockey fans, they'd like laugh. And it's like, no, it's called, Shane Wright missed his entire DY 1 year. Yeah, the year before the year before his draft year, he played 0 hockey games, Shane Wright.
Yep.
So of course this guy isn't gonna just show up and you know be able to get right back on the path that he was looking like he was on before. I
You
don't know.
keep doing unnecessary but awesome puns. You said something about Shane Wright and going to laugh, and then I was thinking, yeah, I'll laugh too. I'll point at what Laugh did this year. And then you said he's not going to get right back on the path.
Yeah, Lafreniere's been awesome. Jokes aside, I guess.
And
um,
then maybe the Rangers' best player so far this playoffs, Vinny Trocheck.
Trocheck, I was gonna go Igor. He hasn't. I haven't even really seen him where I'm like, you have to make that save. Like when he has to make that save, he makes that save.
Yeah, but dude, Trocheck has been like if there was a Selke trophy for the playoffs, give it to Trocheck. If there was if there was a best 200-foot player of the playoffs award, give it to Trocheck right now.
We've had this conversation on this podcast, and we don't need to have it today, but like
Yeah.
more playoff awards,
Yeah,
especially for
100%.
how long the playoffs are. Uh,
But before we move on from the series, what's your prediction? What do you think's gonna happen? I'm going Rangers in 7. I think Hurricanes win the next game and then lose because they're just gassed from giving it their all.
and again, by the time this episode goes out, these predictions will either, we'll be heading to 7. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the one that is probably the bigger risk. I think they win 2-1 tonight.
Rangers do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think the Hurricanes only score one goal, but I think Mr. Seth Jarvis has something to say about that. But
Oh, man. By the way, Seth Jarvis also, and listen, I'm a huge international hockey guy. As these players are doing their thing, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that we have two best on best tournaments in 2 years coming up. And it feels a little bit like Lafreniere and Jarvis are really playing their way into that conversation. Same thing with Johnston, right? Like
oh hell yeah,
Team
hundred
Canada's
percent.
um Vancouver, Edmonton. So the first thing right off the top here, man. Like so Alexander Ovechkin, that's the one I always go back to is he was drafted in 2005, 4. Rookie year was 05-06 because of the lockout. And 2018 was the first time he went past the second round of the playoffs and he won his Stanley Cup. There were a ton of criticisms of Ovechkin for not showing up in big games and not showing up in the second round when this team needed him before that. Draisaitl and McDavid similarly are this far into their career without winning a Stanley Cup. Um, but you can't even remotely say that these guys aren't playing at the level they need to be playing at. Like it's unbelievable what these guys continue to do. And honestly, like we can talk about this more in the summer, I'd be happy to, but how good they're playing paired with the fact that like they were almost pushed to the brink by this Vancouver team in game 4. Um like that tells you something about how the roster composition has just let them down like crazy.
Yeah, yeah, I don't disagree at all. I mean, this is a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl who every playoff game you watch, there's a graphic coming on screen showing how they have some of the best playoff points ever. Like their playoff numbers are out of this world. I'm talking Gretzky's better. That's not a pause for dramatic effect. That's a pause for I'm having a hard time thinking of anyone else who has better playoff numbers. It's mental. It's absolutely mental.
And
Um,
the power
ugh,
play. Like it's and Vancouver, like they're trying. Don't get me started on Ian Cole. Like, as we talk about the fact that the Edmonton Oilers have been let down by their depth scoring, I think in this series, the list of players most valuable to the Edmonton Oilers: one, Connor McDavid; two, Leon Draisaitl; three, Evan Bouchard; four, Ian Cole. Like he has single-handedly handed goals and scoring chances to this Oilers team just by playing. Like I can't
did
even.
did
I
you
can't.
write that in our hockey pool group chat minus the Evan Bouchard part? I've read this slash heard this.
I did say that I think he's been one of the most valuable Oilers,
Fair.
but I mean, I think the conversation was like kind of like we're having here. It
Yeah.
was more an indictment on how bad Edmonton's depth has been, um, because and I thought it was better, James. Like I did. Warren Fogle had an awesome season. I saw so much promise in Ryan McLeod, and Adam Henrique I thought was kind of a savvy pickup. I thought they overpaid for him, but I still thought he was going to be a good addition. And you have guys like Corey Perry and Evander Kane who have shown up in the playoffs before that are doing absolutely nothing. And you contrast that with Vancouver, where you've got Brock Besser, JT Miller, Elias Lindholm all playing at such a high level. The guy that's been disappointing for Vancouver has obviously been Pedersen, and it feels like it's not even really worth talking about because everybody else in the world is talking about how bad Pedersen's playing right now, and he is.
How'd
Line,
you like that interview?
it looked like a guy who knew that he'd been bad and knows he needs to get better,
Yeah.
right? That simple as
And
that.
he's tired of saying that exact thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I hope now he's on a line apparently today with Nils Hoglander and Elias Lindholm. That's the morning skate.
That's interesting.
I think putting him on wing is a good idea. I do. Because he hasn't been engaged enough down the middle. He's been engaged defensively. I think that's been an underrated part of his game. The fact that he controls the defensive zone very well and he's got a very good active stick, breaking up these Oilers cross ice passes. But game 5 is tonight. So again, I don't want to go too much into speculating in the future. But the big story from this series, we haven't even touched on it yet, is the goaltending. So Calvin Pickard's getting the start in game 5 tonight. He started in game 4. Artur Shilovs outplayed Stuart Skinner in the games 1 and 3 victories, and then Calvin Pickard outplayed Artur Shilovs in the game 4 win for Edmonton. But it's crazy again, again, this is something that's been widely covered, but it's crazy that we're going into a game 5 of a second round series between two rivals, and the goaltending battle is Artur Shilovs against Calvin Pickard. Like, who had that on their bingo card this year? But
Yeah,
Shilovs
yeah.
has earned that spot, right? Like Pickard's there because Skinner's been a disaster. Shilovs is there because he's played well enough to stay there.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with you. Pickard had a really solid last game too. Like he made a couple saves that were, oh,
Un
these could very well go in the net.
Yeah. Well, and the goals that went in, both, like, I think the second one deflected twice. The first one definitely deflected once. Like, he wasn't beaten clean at all, right? Like, um, Garland's shot went off Nurse, and then Besser's shot, I think, hit the defenseman in front of him and then hit Dakota Joshua in front of the net. Um, and obviously, we're praising Calvin Pickard here. This is going to come out on Friday, and there's a chance that Pickard either is earning that praise in game 5 or he was a disaster. We'll see. Um, Thatcher Demko's made a lot of progress. That's good for Vancouver. I said that if they get Demko back and they weren't losing this series, I thought they were going to win it. Um, Tonight's huge. I think if they lose this game tonight, I think they're done in 6. But winning this game tonight could be everything. I know you want to talk Zadorov.
Well, actually, just before we get there, I mean, Calvin Pickard is a goalie that I'm very familiar with. He used to be in the Avs system, and this is a guy who is every time he's been given a chance, he's played well. This guy has never wasted a chance, but there's always been another guy who's given the chance instead of him after they come back from injury. And that is sometimes the name of the game in sports. This is a guy who was the one-time WHL all-time saves leader after 4 seasons with the Seattle Thunderbirds. The guy came straight into a starting role in the WHL in 08-09 and just sat there until he went pro in 11-12. And I mean, second round pick by the Avs back then. I remember thinking he was going to be their starter because he played 50 games in 16-17 when that team was very, very bad. And you know what? He performed admirably. He did his best. And I thought he earned the right to stick around. Then what do you know? He's picked by Vegas in the expansion draft. Bye-bye. I was very sad. I thought he was going to be good. I thought he was going to keep playing. At that point, he was probably only, what, 25, 26 years old, something like that. And then he gets picked by Vegas, shipped to Toronto. Toronto trades for him to put him in the minors. And after that, I think he's probably played about maybe 40 games, 40 NHL games, something like that. And I mean, when he's played, he has never played bad. Yes, you know what? Everyone gets shelled for a game here and there. I'm looking at his 3 games with Detroit in 1920. He's got a 797 save percentage. I also I also remember fairly well that they'd be getting blown out 5-0, and then they put him in, and then he gets 5 goals scored on him on 12 shots. Kind of hard to blame him for that. Team lost like 9-0. It's not pretty. But yeah, I mean, I'm just happy the guy's getting a chance. And this is the kind of thing where, let's say he wins a few big games. Maybe that earns him a contract as a backup somewhere next year. We like that. We want to see more of that. So I'm hoping for the best for him. His regular season numbers this year were solid, 909 save percentage, 12 wins, 20 games. I'm just happy to see the guy get another chance.
Nikita Zadorov.
Nikita Zadorov is awesome. First of all, I told you that when the Canucks traded for him, I said you're gonna love him. He talks to the media every time. He talks smack in the media, then he backs it up on the ice. He is a hell of a player. Sometimes he hasn't looked good when he is played outside of his role, or sorry, rather played above his role. He's typically best served as a number 4, maybe number 5, playing about 16 to 18 minutes a game. But the Canucks play him in a higher role, and he's relishing that opportunity.
Yeah, he's excelling at it.
Yeah, I might even go as far as saying he's probably like sixth or seventh best performer among defensemen in playoffs this year.
He might be the most surprising.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was drafted high for a reason. Didn't really develop into what he was supposed to. Shipped around a bit. I remember Colorado thinking he was fairly expendable and shipping him off for a rental Brandon Saad. And yeah, I mean, I didn't really think it was that big of a loss. Then he bounced around a bit. You started hearing his name and his voice more when he ended up in Calgary and shipped to Vancouver. And like I said, backing it up on the ice. I love watching him. He's actually my favorite part about watching Canucks games. I'm kind of annoyed that the Canucks and Flames fan bases didn't carry on his nickname, Menace. I enjoyed Menace.
Yeah.
I don't like it when people call him Big Z. That's Zdeno Chara. That's not it. It's not it at all. I preferred Menace.
I like the fact that the Edmonton Oilers are playing against a team whose two best players in this series have arguably been two players that they acquired from the Calgary Flames at the deadline because Lindholm's been quite good as well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I obviously have Brock Besser in that group as well, Artur Shelovs. Vancouver, man, like I think I truly believe Rick Tocchet deserves the world of credit for this. Like the way they're playing. Like all these players were here, right? They were here under
Yeah.
Boudreaux. A lot of them were here under Green. Um, and they just weren't performing like this. And Tocchet is getting the best out of so many of these players. I think it's just got to be that, it's got to be that almost the third line. It's which has been Pedersen, Hoglander, Mikheyev. It's going to get swapped around tonight. But I think that's the one for Vancouver that's got to get going. And I think if that does, they could definitely move past the Oilers, but I think Dallas beats Colorado, James, and then I think Dallas will. I'd be a little bit surprised to see a game 6 in the Western Conference Final this year if it's Dallas there.
Aiden, is this like in the BCHL where you earn the right to get beat by Penticton? Is the winner of the winner of this division gonna earn the right to get beat by Dallas?
It kind of feels like that. What I will say though is I felt the exact same way when Montreal went in against Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Like it's I almost think Vancouver matches up better with Colorado. Like if Vancouver beats Edmonton, they're gonna have to go into a series against Colorado and beat them the same way they beat Edmonton, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. Um, where
Edmonton, Colorado doesn't necessarily play the same way as Edmonton, though.
no, but it would be keeping the offensive firepower at bay and
Hmm.
then doing your best to strike off the rush and off opportunistic plays that you create with your forecheck, right? Uh,
Right.
whereas Dallas, I just I don't really see how you beat them aside from being Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. Like that's it.
And Arturi Lehkonen,
Yeah, yeah.
because
Uh,
he is good at stuff.
speaking
I
of,
actually can't think of any stuff he's not good at. But
yeah, he's a complete winger. It's the whole package. Speaking of being good at stuff, the Florida Panthers are good at this hockey thing.
yeah, they are too. Have you noticed anything they're bad at? I haven't.
I don't think so. Closing out the series in Game 5, they were bad at.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
I didn't expect Boston to win that game. I also didn't think it was goalie interference. Like again, it was there was very minimal contact, and Danton Heinen doesn't make that contact unless Oliver Ekman Larson is there to box him into that contact. That is, of course, talking about the game winner. In that game, Boston wins 2-1 on the Charlie McAvoy goal. Little bit of contact between Heinen and Bobrovsky in front. It was challenged, and eventually it stood. Um, but Florida again, like I don't think Boston. I don't think Boston has another win in them, but I could be corrected. I think this is Florida in 6. Um, and I think the Panthers and the Rangers, like, or the Hurricanes, really, like that Eastern Final is going to be big. It was a boring series between Florida and Carolina. Like I know things happen, there were dramatic moments, but overall, like it just Carolina felt flat. They felt deflated in that series last year. So as much as like it'd be kind of cool to see a rematch and see them potentially have the chance to have another crack at the Panthers, the idea of a Rangers Panthers Eastern Final is just like it's cool and it's exciting. Sam
Yeah,
Reinhart and Matthew
I can
Tkachuk.
I can agree with you there.
Yeah. Verhaeghe's playing great. Um, Bobrovsky, to me, this is what's left for him. I think he's accomplished everything else that he could have probably hoped to accomplish. This is the last thing for him, and it's going to be interesting to see him march towards it.
Where do you where do you think Paul Maurice stands on best coaches in the league? Because if he's not one of the best, he's one of everyone's favorites.
I think he's one of everyone's favorites. Best coaches in the league to me, you have to be able to implement your system and get the best out of any group of players. Paul Maurice in Winnipeg unequivocally did not ever get the best out of that group of players. Save for maybe 2018, I thought Nikolai Ehlers was the most under and poorly utilized player in the NHL under Paul Maurice.
But he's continued to be that among everyone else.
He has. Apparently, Winnipeg are shopping him, and I think like they're gonna sell him for pennies on the dollar, and then he's gonna absolutely rip wherever he goes next year and make them look stupid.
I
Um,
think he's just not as good as we think.
I that's possible. um, but man, Maurice is getting the most out of this Florida team. Um, they're through and through a great club, and easily could be Stanley Cup champions this year, and they're showing why in this series because I know it's 3-2, but they've they've outplayed Boston pretty much every game since game one.
I think my favorite thing about watching Florida is this is a team that we all thought kind of hockey lucked their way and grinded and worked their way into a finals appearance last year. And since then, they've just been like, oh, hey, yeah, we're super contenders now. We're among the best of the best, and we are going to stay that way. And then I think also they've told everyone around the league that you got to get you a Sam Bennett. Go find you a Sam Bennett, and you will be good. You will be able to be a good contender too.
Great second line center.
Yeah. Then you get to put Lundell on your third line? That's just rude.
Barkov, Bennett, and Lundell. Is there like that's if you're asking me, okay, like three centers that you want to try and win the Stanley Cup. Yeah, take that. Take that to the bank.
Yeah. And then one more thing on Florida. At the start of the playoffs, that ad came up. I think it was a Sportsnet ad where all of the NHL players were like, you know, I'm here. We're here to compete for the cup. But then, so all of them are like, it's the Stanley Cup. And then Matthew Tkachuk goes, you know, I'm here. Yeah, we know why they're here. Honestly, among all the teams remaining, I think I said this last episode, Florida's going to win the cup. This is the Florida Panthers year. And now we will not like I think if it's not this year, it's next year. This team has everything they need to have. And you know what? They'll probably lose a guy or two in the offseason, but they'll fill it. They'll fill the hole. They do that. Their management and pro scouting is just fantastic. It is fantastic. You know what? I just no beef against the Bruins. They've held in pretty well ish. Um, can we just get this series over with?
Yeah, well, we can get the talking about it over with because I think we've said what we need to say. Florida's better. Period.
All we've done is glaze the Panthers and like pretend the Bruins don't exist, but that's how the series feels.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's over.
Speaking of Boston, as we move out of this series, Vancouver Canucks fans, you want to sign Elias Lindholm. Boston Bruins are also going to want to sign Elias Lindholm. He's perfect for them. It's a match made in heaven for the Bruins. They've needed a center, right? Since Krejci and Bergeron retired, that's been the focus. They've got Zacha, they've got Coyle. Zacha, Coyle to me aren't a 1-2. They're a pretty sick 2-3 though. And if they have a 1, all of a sudden Lindholm, Zacha, Coyle is a nice little group. Here's the problem for Canucks fans. Boston right now has $23.5 million in cap space next year, and they're free agents that they have to sign, in my opinion. Swayman, DeBrusk, Grzelcyk. That's it. So you're looking at them after dealing with Swayman, DeBrusk, and Grzelcyk, still having probably between $6.5 and $9.5 million in cap space left. That's before they move anybody out, and they'll probably move Linus Ullmark out. They tried at the deadline, and he vetoed their trade. But I think they look at Swayman and they say, we have one of the best starters in the league. We don't need one of the other top 15 goalies in the league to sit behind him.
No.
So I would love Vancouver to keep Lindholm. He's played his way into uh, being indispensable for this team at the current moment. But for the Boston Bruins, I think that is a must for the offseason is a first line center. And I think Lindholm has to be the guy they are at hard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but there's gonna be no shortage of suitors.
No kidding.
Top line centers don't grow on trees. Neither do second line centers. Honestly, neither do third line centers. Find you a good center who's good at everything on the ice. Good luck. Good luck.
Okay,
Like,
sad news today, James. Let's get to it.
uh, dude, uh,
This
this
hurt.
is such a blow to the broadcast world.
It hurts. Like, and if
I
you
can
grew
hear
up,
his voice every time I read his name.
yeah, if you grew up caring about hockey and sports and TSN being relevant and the center of that, you knew Darren Detition, right? He was battling cancer for a couple years, but if again, yeah, if you grew up watching sports, watching hockey, he was the voice of the TSN Sports Center to me. You think of early 2010 Sports Center and you think of him. You think of him recapping the highlights. He was awesome at it. He was the best at it. And it feels like a heavy-hearted kind of day because he always smiling, always happy, charismatic, charming, seemed like an awesome person and this hurts.
Aiden, I'm gonna put you in a bit of a time machine here. You finish school for the day. You go hang out with your buddies. Maybe you play sports that day. It's a nice spring day. You're finishing school. Playoffs have either just started or the end of the season's right there. Weather's getting good. You didn't get any time to watch any sports that day. You were out having fun, enjoying the sun. You come home, and at the end of the day, you're watching Sports Center. And this voice recaps everything for you in such an exciting and captivating way. The man they affectionately called Dutch, he's going to be missed so much. And I will never forget those days. I was out kicking a ball around with my friends, maybe age 12, 13, 14. And I come home, flick on Sports Center, at 9 o'clock. All the games are over. And he just tells me everything that happened. And I have a great time doing it. You know what? The hour ends. Just leave it on. Watch it again. The same thing happened for years and years and years. Like I have probably done exactly that. Rewatched that hour of Sports Center, because I have nothing else to watch. But I'm perfectly happy just sitting there listening to this guy recap everything that happened, even though I've just watched and listened to it for the whole hour prior. I'll do it again. And I would do it again and again, over and over again. Rest in peace to one talented, talented person that I don't think any of us will be forgetting anytime soon.
Last bit of news before we move on to junior hockey. Junior hockey update will just be that the Memorial Cup field has been decided. Russian Maxim Tisplikov, who had a great season at Spartak Moscow this season. He's 25 years old, undrafted. Apparently, according to Elliot Friedman, met with the Montreal Canadiens. This feels like the kind of gamble Montreal should be taking on at this point. This guy's 25. He just broke out. Kind of an average KHL player until last year. Took a step forward last year and then amazing this year. Riding shotgun to Nikolai Goldobin, who was one of the best players in the KHL. He scored 31 goals in 65 games. And, we've seen this a lot, right? A little bit more recently. Obviously, Panarin and Kaprizov come to mind first, of the late bloomers that became superstars. But obviously, Colorado's taking a swing at it with Nikolai Kovalenko, and Vancouver, Andrei Kuzmenko was amazing in the first year, and he's been really good since he got moved to Calgary this season. Montreal, to me, James, is a team where, like, outside of Chicago, they have as good a chance as anybody to be the upper echelon of NHL teams coming up in the next 4 to 6 years. You've got an amazing, amazing.
He just signed with the Islanders.
No kidding.
Yeah, 36 minutes ago.
Wow. Look at you. What's the contract?
1 year entry level deal. I don't see numbers
If it's
because it's Lou Lamoriello and he's not putting out the numbers.
entry level 1 year, it's 950, I think, at max. Great.
Probably very bonus laden.
Yeah, you know what? That's great for the Isles because they need scoring, right? It'll help Barzell or Horvat the same way that he rode shotgun to Goldobin. Yeah, anyways, forget what I said about Montreal because Tisplakov is a New York Islander. Let's quickly move it to. Let's start in the dub. Moose Jaw
Yeah.
win the WHL. I picked Prince George, but Moose Jaw. This always had a great chance of happening. Matthew Savoy, great addition. Jagger Furcus, man. 14 goals and 32 points in 20 playoff games. Like, he is such a talented hockey player. And for him, it's just going to be, he's going to go to Seattle. And honestly, the do or die of his career even is going to be how he develops into more of an all-around player in Seattle. But boy, do the Moose Jaw Warriors oh, do they love this guy. And Denton Mateychuk as a defenseman has to be commended as well. 11 goals and 30 points in these playoffs. And this was always a great team, but it really feels like they played their best hockey when it mattered most. And Braden Yeager, somebody who I've had my doubts about, he was good. He was good in these playoffs, and it's hard not to look at that four-headed monster of Savoy, Mateychuk, Yeager, and Furcus, and not think that Moose Jaw is going to have a good chance to win this. Easton Cowan's London Knights come out of the OHL, and I'll let you talk a little bit about the OHL final because it had some pretty crazy parts of it. Cowan, obviously, he's a Toronto pick playing in London, so you're hearing a lot about him. You're hearing a lot about him though for good reason. Like, he's just a consistent performer. The other guy there that is very, very, very much worth noting is Sam Dickinson. He's been very good in these playoffs as well. 70 points in the regular season in 68 games, 13 points in 18 playoff games, but he's playing very steady hockey. Looks confident out there. He's going to be a top 10 pick without a doubt. I think he's the second best defenseman in the draft. I think if a team takes Salayev over Dickinson, it's going to turn into a mistake. I think Sam Dickinson, only Artem Levshunov is in the Dickinson category for me in terms of defenseman in this year's draft.
So in these scores in the London Knights Oshawa Generals game for the OHL final were absolutely ridiculous. I happened to be in Port Alberni for quite a bit of it, and luckily Alberni Brewing there, which is a nice little brewery, solid little building. They've got about 7 TVs going, and most people in there don't care about what sports are on. So we would have 2 NHL playoff games. One of them usually just highlights, an NBA playoff game, and then probably OHL finals. We would have whatever junior game TSN had at the time. And every time it was an OHL final game, it was nuts. So the first one I caught was I caught probably the last half hour of game 2 of this series, in which the London Knights followed up their 8-1 win over Oshawa with a 9-1 win. It was frightening almost. And the thing is, these Oshawa Generals players, from the eye test, they didn't look like they were playing that much worse. The Knights were just swallowing them.
Yeah.
Completely swallowing them. Oshawa follows that up, and we're watching this one as we're watching the Avs not play very well in game 4. Oshawa gets to the end of regulation tied 6-6. Fighting for their lives in game 3 of this series. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. 7-6 OT, done. So, you think maybe Oshawa's going to come back into it. They really showed some heart, some courage, determination last game. Nope, 7-1 Knights. See you later. Pack your bags. Done. Completely done. It's actually frightening the scores that I saw in this series. Aiden, you've paid more attention to junior hockey over the last few years. Is this something we're seeing all the time in league finals?
Oh no.
That's what I thought.
No, London's playing like a well-oiled machine right now, and it's noticeable that they are, the players are playing well, but even just the hockey the team is playing as a whole
Yeah.
it's at a high level. The QMJHL entry is Drummondville. Ethan Gauthier is their guy. Kind of proving, I think, a little bit Gauthier that maybe some teams doubted him last season and shouldn't have. He was kind of a fringe first round talent that dropped to 37. But 14 goals in 19 playoff games. He's been awesome. Saginaw's in there as the hosts. You've got Michael Misa on that team, top 3 pick next season in all likelihood. Um, Saginaw, I think, is the weakest entry, which sometimes is true of the host. The host always will load up, but
Yeah.
um, like it sometimes it falls flat to the team that actually won their league, which might be the case here with London and Saginaw.
And Aiden, are they not hosting so that Michael Misa can be showcased?
To a degree, yeah. I think the CHL noticed that Connor Bedard and Connor McDavid both didn't end up in the Memorial Cup. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if Medicine Hat somehow ends up with a Memorial Cup because that
And one more question on this Memorial Cup. I really enjoy paying attention to the Memorial Cup when I can, when I have time. But do you think London can keep producing offensively this much against these teams? Like, do you think that's possible?
yeah, because it's not yes, because it's not necessarily just because the players are good. The players are good and they're playing a great team game every time, right? Like they're the whole team's a well-oiled machine. I said that, and that's I keep saying it because it's the best way to describe them.
Perfect. Well, moving out of junior. I think as we're coming to the end, Aiden, have you seen any good movies since our last pod? Any that feel of note?
My dad and I sat down and watched the Saving Sakic documentary. It was very interesting. I had
Yeah.
no real idea of the context of the Joe Sakic New York Rangers offer sheet. If you guys have Amazon Prime, it's more than worth a watch if you're a hockey fan. I recommend it.
The nice thing is too, it's a casual watch.
Only 50 minutes, yeah,
Yeah.
5-0. I expected a multi-episode series, but it still doesn't feel like it doesn't tell the story. It tells the story perfectly in that as well. And yeah, I loved it. It was great. How about you?
Aiden, I watched quite the movie. I watched what's being called a romantic thriller from relatively inexperienced director Rose Glass. I watched Love Lies Bleeding starring Kristen Stewart. Also in it, Ed Harris, Dave Franco, Jenna Malone, Katie O'Brien. It was one of the more interesting movies I've seen in my life, to be honest. I was a huge fan of this. I was very excited to watch it because it's one of those movies where they did an incredible job with the trailer, music, and scene selection wise, where it doesn't give away the whole story, but it leaves you wanting more and leaves you excited for it. I feel like a lot of movie trailers are completely the opposite of that. They tell you the whole plot and then they just completely suck, to be honest. But yeah, no, trailer was incredible. Lived up to the hype. It's getting great reviews. Um, it is a romantic crime thriller about um steroids, bodybuilders, murder, and family. And you know what? That sounds like a complete mess, and that doesn't sound very good. It's the opposite of that. It is perfectly crafted. I believe it's an original screenplay. We love seeing an original idea, something that's not just a rehash or a remake or a book that's poorly adapted. No, this is an original screenplay. It looks fantastic. Visuals are great. The acting's great. Um, Probably the best I've ever seen Kristen Stewart. she's had her good movies and her high budget flops and her random teen stuff, but like this is awesome. Like I honestly think she's going to get some award consideration for this. Um, one thing I will say for those watching it, expect some things to be kind of weird, weird and trippy almost, where you're going, is this really happening? Don't let it take away from the experience. Just ride it out. It's a very, very good flick. Highly recommend anyone. Then to top that off, I rewatched The Girl Next Door, starring Emile Hirsch and Alicia Cuthbert recently. You just want something fun to hop into a time machine in the early 2000s and like a coming of age slash raunchy comedy slash drama slash romance slash whatever. Just such a fun movie. Like I could watch that probably once a month for the rest of my life and I'd be fine with it. Like just so much fun. But yeah, I think that's all I got there. Aiden, do we have any questions?
No.
Well, we don't have any questions, but I had one critique from a friend. That friend said, get some guests. We love hearing you, but we want to hear you interview people because you guys are good at that stuff.
Good luck.
So I will take that critique and I will try and find us a guest or two.
Listen, I'm always trying. Okay,
Yeah.
guys? I am. I am. And it's a summer where I'm really hoping that we get at least two or three like very
Yeah.
solid. James, I have one trivia question for you.
I'll let you go first and then I've got a couple for you.
Okay. So, I want you to tell me the last five team captains to win the Stanley Cup and win the Conn Smythe Trophy for their team. And I want you to tell me the years in which they did it.
Stanley Cup and Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah. So captains that captain their team to the Stanley Cup and won the Conn Smythe in the process. Um, and then the years that these players did it. Last five players to do it.
Hey, 2018 Alexander Ovechkin.
That is the most recent. Yep.
And then 2017 and 2016 Sidney Crosby.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm getting Chicago ones mixed up here. Uh 20 no, no. 2013 Jonathan Taves?
Oh,
No, he did in 2010.
yeah.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was Taves 10, Kane 13, and Keith.
Yeah. I damn. I knew Taves and Kane were 10 and 13. Okay, well, give me
Two,
a half point on that one.
two more.
Two more?
Yeah, you got three names. Two more captains.
Oh, okay. So the Crosby two counts as one.
Yeah, because it's last five players.
Okay. Okay, and then I got 2008 Nicholas Lidstrom.
No,
He
no.
didn't win in 2008. No? Who was it?
2008 was Zetterberg.
Okay. All right.
For
All
some reason
right.
it was Zetterberg. Yeah, it was Zetterberg for sure. Yeah, it was Zetterberg.
Dude, you got to go far back for this one.
The fifth one, like the farthest one away here, happened before I was born.
Yeah, I was just thinking that because I'm going way back and I'm getting to the point where I don't know Conn Smythe winners.
Okay, so I'll give you a passing mark, a 2.5 out of 5. You know what? No, I'm giving you a full 3 out of 5 because Lidstrom is one of them. He did it in
Yeah.
2002.
Wait. Yeah, he wasn't captain in 2002 though. Steve Yzerman was.
No, but he sorry. He did win a Conn Smythe. So I'm giving you the uh,
Oh,
I'm giving you
okay.
the point for knowing Lidstrom did. Scott Stevens is the oldest one with the
Yeah.
Devils in 2000. The one in between that you missed was 07 Scott Niedermayer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Huh.
So Lidstrom did win in 02, not as the captain. So the captains are 18 Ovechkin, 17 Crosby, 16 Crosby, 10 Taves, 7 Niedermayer, 2000 Stevens.
I'm really surprised I didn't get the Niedermeyer one. That seemed like it would have been in my wheelhouse. I'm very, very familiar with that couple years of Ducks. Huh. Interesting. Okay, that's a good one. I like that one. I'll take my passing mark. Thank you. There was a little bit of courtesy on that one. All right. So I've got two career trajectories, but I'm not doing those yet. First off, I want you to name at least three AHL teams that Calvin Pickard has played for.
Okay, here's why this is a bad idea. Or too easy of a question for you to ask me.
Yeah, this is the start. You're about to go through hell.
Okay, well, Pickard, the reason I would know this right now is because I'm working for a company called Digest Media, and the job for me there is to cover the Edmonton Oilers. Um, so obviously, as Calvin Pickard has come in, I've done my thing, and researched him, and part of my talking in, I believe, the video that came out yesterday on Oilers Digest, go subscribe so that I can make some money off it. Um, was the fact that going into the playoffs with Edmonton this season, he'd only played 5 professional hockey games in the playoffs. 3 of them for the Toronto Marlies, which is 1, and then 2 of them for the Bakersfield Condors, which is 2, and then Grand Rapids, I'll say, is my third one. Detroit.
Okay. Sweet. Good job. Awesome. All right. Now I've got two career trajectories for you.
And he's like, am I getting these remotely?
So this player played from 1998 to 2014. Career went Montreal, New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, New York Rangers.
So here's why I'll get this. It's because, you know, I'm obviously big hockey guy, and being a big hockey guy, you're gonna have your YouTube compilations up every now and again, even if they're just playing in the background. Anytime you see fighting compilations, Aaron Asham's on it.
Yep.
Aaron
Nice
Asham,
work.
like,
Nice work.
yeah. So that's the first one, Aaron Asham. Yeah.
So I need the listeners to know that you paused this and you ran through some names. And at one point, you said to me, I should be able to get this, right? There was an air of defeat in your voice for just a short minute where I could hear in your voice that you thought, I'm not going to be able to get this. Am I right about that?
Yeah, because it was the end of it. I can't remember, like, I remember Asham played for the Rangers, but it was thinking about, all right, Philly and Pittsburgh in the early 2010s, because they had playoff series and the rivalry was pretty intense. So when a guy played for both, that was kind of how it clicked in my head.
Right, right. Okay. Next up. This player played from 2007 to 2017. Went Chicago Blackhawks, Florida Panthers, Columbus Blue Jackets, Colorado Avalanche, Vancouver Canucks. This one should be objectively easy. It's a buffer for you, actually, while I give you the hard one. You're stuck.
Oh, no, no, no. I got it. I got it.
You're not stuck?
Again, I paused it. I don't know. No, no, no. You know what? It was the same thing. So I'll get into why I'm gonna get this right. Or I think I'm gonna get this right. I'm about 80% sure.
Keep in mind, he incorrectly guessed Jason Magna with the utmost confidence very recently.
I was just yapping. But I'm yapping here too. Let's see if I'm yapping correctly. So obviously I'm in Vancouver, and there's a lot of people around very into the Canucks, and I think that's very cool. But I think back to the dark days of the Canucks, and I think, man, if you don't remember Michael Chaput and Alex Biega being full-time Canucks, then are you really a Canucks fan? One of those guys is Jack Skilly, who was
Nice.
7th overall pick by Chicago, had a lot of promise, and I believe, like, I don't know how many games he played for Vancouver that year. He didn't play very well. Um,
55 games that year.
sure, yeah, yeah. That's my 2 cents. If you're really happy with the Canucks playoff run, I'm happy for you, but know that fans that lived through the Jack Skilly era are enjoying it more than you.
He was better in Colorado the year before.
Sure, I believe
He
you.
would have random flashes where it's like, oh wow, I see why this guy was a top 10 pick.
Yeah, he
Like
was kind
all
of
of a sudden he just gets blazing speed and dekes through two guys, beats another guy wide, and then misses the net. And you're like, huh, there is something there.
well, it's kind of funny that he's one of the guys that kind of gave the US National Development Program, like a little bit of hesitancy because before, like I know this is foreign because the National Development Program now is so good. Like early 2010s, it wasn't regarded the same way. Like people like players that came out of that were regarded with caution in the draft. And one of the reasons why is that Jack Skilly and other players like him would come out, play 16 games and look very good, and then get drafted in the top 10 and then go to university and be average and then not turn into what they were supposed to. Um, all right, you got one more, and this is the hard one. I'll let
I
you know.
got one more. This player's career was very long. Spanned from 1990 until 2009.
Oh my God, dude.
Goes Detroit, Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, Vancouver Canucks, Philadelphia Flyers, Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers, Ottawa Senators, Columbus Blue Jackets, Phoenix Coyotes, St. Louis Blues, Nashville Predators, New York Islanders.
Let's just establish that James is asking me to name a player whose last NHL season ended when I was 6 years old.
Yep, and let's just establish that Aiden knows more about hockey than most people 10 years older than him.
So again, I'm gonna get somewhat lucky here. So James has asked me 4 trivia questions, and this is now the third where like in the last 3 days or 3 to 5 days, I've needed to like look this guy up to reference something because I have a couple buddies, uh, close friends that are kind of in the category of people just kind of starting to watch hockey a little bit more. One of them is a big basketball guy, one of them is a big soccer guy, but they're here watching Canucks games a lot. And question one of them asked me was player who's played for the most NHL teams. And I'm counting here. And I think that's this player. It's Mike Sillinger.
Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is. I thought at once you wrote the NHL team names down, you would get it immediately.
Yeah, it's the volume and then the fact that again, I just Googled to make sure. Like I thought it was Sillinger. But I did just look it up to make sure that he did play for all these teams when my buddy had asked me like, oh, who's played for the most? Because I know he'd been traded the most because every year on Trade Center somebody brings it up.
Yep.
um,
Yep.
all right, bada bing, bada boom.
Well, that was good. You did good on your trivia. I passed my trivia. um, yeah, well, that was a fun one, and we will be back with you guys after some of these series are decided. By the time we come back to you, I imagine it'll be conference finals.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll be back to you probably at the top of the conference finals. Enjoy the hockey for the meantime. Don't be one of the terrible people in the Instagram comment section just voicing your opinion because opinions are like blank. Everybody has them. Yeah. So without further ado, let's roll it outro. Thanks, guys.